one of my learnings that I've had on the road is to arrive at the campground before dark. Somehow we always ended up getting there post sunset, and it's very difficult to set up a vehicle you're unfamiliar with in the dark.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. Today we are going to talk about a form of travel that I know nothing about, absolutely nothing. And I'm very, very curious because I have kind of a love-hate relationship with the whole thing, because on the one hand, it fascinates me and I would like to. And on the other hand, I think I'm too lazy to do that. So let's dive in right away and speak to Maddi Bourgerie, Director of Communications at RVshare. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, Maddi.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I have to tell you one thing. I know what RV is, but I actually had to Google what it stands for.
Oh, yes, recreational vehicle.
Yeah, because in England or in where I am in Europe, it would be a caravan, really. But
Yeah,
there are different sizes of those things, aren't there?
they get pretty large here in America, and I think that's maybe the biggest difference. They could get pretty sizable compared to a caravan, or we also call them camper vans, if it is more of a van style vehicle.
What is the biggest in your business? How many people does the biggest one take?
I think what you can imagine is kind of like a tour bus or something that you would see in other parts of the world, or, a rock star tour bus where bands can sleep and they have bunk beds and maybe sleep a number of people, like 6 to 8 adults. I would say on RVshare, more of a recreational vehicle type. It's a large motorhome. It could be up to 30 or 40 feet, a diesel pusher that kind of takes diesel gas to really move it down the road, and then have a small apartment on board with a large king bed, a full bathroom. And although it might not sleep a lot of people or set up that way, it is a larger unit that a lot of people say is the size of their apartments. So they can get pretty big.
It's like a luxury hotel suite, really,
Yeah, it can be.
that you have to drive around. And the other thing that always fascinated me, because before we started recording, I was telling Maddie that I used to do round trips in the US, and when I was a tour guide. And what always fascinated me also is that you can hang your car. You can tow your car, and then you can park that thing, and then you can just drive around with the car. I think it's a fascinating way of traveling, but it's also difficult if somebody is not used to driving such a big vehicle. I think it must be quite tough to park. I wouldn't be able to park that thing.
Yeah, I would say the larger ones are definitely more of a challenge and something that you would want to get some experience with on RVshare. So we're a peer-to-peer platform. So if you own an RV in the US, you can list and rent it out to anyone looking to travel. You can rent it out to international travelers as long as you have a driver's license. The platform comes with built-in insurance, so you're insured as soon as you get in the driver's seat. But we have all different types of makes and models of RVs, so it doesn't necessarily have to be one of these large, big rigs. It could be a smaller camper van that you see a lot that's popular on social media, where people kind of deck them out and put their own design spin on them. And it just has a bed and a small bathroom, maybe not a bathroom at all. And then there's also travel trailers where you can get those, pulled by a truck. So it actually hooks up to an SUV or a larger vehicle and is pulled. And those are actually our most popular because the owners that own those units deliver them to a destination. So if you're going to see one of the US greatest destinations like the Grand Canyon or head to Yellowstone National Park, you can actually have the owner come and deliver and drop off the RV for you and set it up. So you're not actually using it and moving it yourself. It's just kind of more of a temporary home wherever you want it. And that's a very popular use case with our audience.
Yeah, I understand that there are all different forms of renting these things, because when I was saying before that I may be too lazy, I always imagine that my my worst thought is like having to empty the toilet. But I think that's part of the whole deal, isn't it? Or can you have that done?
Yeah, it's definitely part of the deal, and you can experience that yourself if you're maybe staying in it longer. However, if you are only staying in it for 3 to 4 nights, you can have it done, and the owner would do it for you, and you would just pay a small fee to not get your hands dirty.
It's nothing. It's no big deal. It was just one of my thoughts. But I have to tell
Oh,
you that
it's nice.
I do admire people who travel like that. I am originally from Switzerland, and I have neighbors who, they're both retired, and they go everywhere. And it's fascinating because you can just go and you can just stop, and you can, the world is well. Really, the world is your oyster, because if you go away from the US, not talking about what you do now, you can go on a ferry and you can go on another island or another continent. It really is a fascinating way of life. Now, in your case, is your company based? Do you have different bases in the US? Like, can somebody, for example, can somebody pick up an RV in New York and drop it off in, I don't know, LA?
So we are US based, and we have more than 100,000 RV rentals across the US in almost every city, including on Hawaii and in Alaska. They are privately owned, so it's an owner that's listing. So majority of our trips are round trips. So you would, pick it up from the owner and bring it back to them. We do offer and have partners that facilitate one-way trips, and that can be set up, and you could do something like a cross-country trip, maybe the West Coast from like Seattle to Southern California, and that's definitely doable and a popular route. People like to do those one ways, and so it is available on our platform.
Yeah,
Yes.
but there's obviously there would be an extra fee. It's like a rental car, isn't it? If you don't drop
Yes.
it off at the same place, and that's normal as well. Now,
Mhm.
tell me a little bit about your clients. You must have stories about people who have rented vehicles with you. I mean, do you have a funny story? Like what happens to people in those? Do they always know how to use it? And I don't just mean the driving, I also mean like the cooking and the electricity and everything. There must be 100 questions.
Yes, our owners that own the RV are the best resource. They're the ones that know their own vehicle and can do a walkthrough with you and teach you the ins and outs of how to manage and move the vehicle, how to use the propane tank, turn on the, grill if there is one. And yeah, we have people who use RVs for a variety of reasons. I personally, and why I'm here talking to you today is because this is a service that I use and love and have cherished. I've done over 25 RV rentals since I've worked with the company for the last 6 years, which is certainly a record within our company. I have just found that it's an amazing way to travel, and it's really opened up my eyes to this type of travel, being outdoor and experiencing the US in a different way. There are so many different ways that myself and others have used the platform. So a few examples of that would be, of course, that like stereotypical caravan RV type trip where you are heading out and hitting some of our top national parks and seeing some of those amazing sites that the US has to offer. And maybe you're doing that for 7, 10 days, 2 weeks, and driving, a classic RV, which, would be a drivable, something that's manageable, maybe only 20 to 25 feet. And I personally have done that my husband and I do this together, and we like to fly into a city. We live in Texas, and Texas is a huge state. And we've rented here in Texas, but to rent and drive to a national park out west would take 17, 18 hours. And so instead, we fly to a city like Denver or Salt Lake City in Utah, and we pick up from there and get an RV and then explore their backyard, which then shortens our trip much more to about 6 hours or 8 hours total of driving. And we see so much. So one of my favorite trips is flying into Salt Lake City, renting from there. We got a camper van that had solar. It was super self-sustainable. It had had a bathroom on board, which was important for me. That's where my line is drawn in the sand when camping. I have to be able to use the restroom at night. And so we then traveled up through the Grand Tetons, Yellowstone, up to Bozeman, Montana, and then back to Salt Lake. And it was just an amazing experience to really see the outdoors. And I would say that's the majority of how people rent and use RVshare. Other really cool options that people do is they rent them for events and they head to a concert or music festival. Lots of people rent them for racing, like NASCAR racing or F1 racing. There's an F1 track here in Austin, Texas, where I live. That's extremely popular for RV rentals. People fly in from all over the world to come to experience F1 and have an RV delivered to the campground that's right next to the track, and that's their home base for the weekend event.
I never thought of that. Of course, that is as you say, either a Formula One or a concert. Because
Hmm.
when you go to these music concerts, my memories are like camping somewhere in the mud and having a little tent and this. But this, of course, is a much more luxurious version and very, very convenient. And you can go back and forth and excellent. I never for me so far RV or camping travel, it has been is my mind was only about traveling, but of course it has all sorts of forms. And for the people who are listening to us, it may be an idea for you to, wherever you go, whether it's in the US or somewhere else, it's a good way to sleep.
Yes, and it's certainly on my bucket list to do this form of travel outside of the US. I have yet to experience a camper van or caravan RV in another country, but there are amazing places to experience travel this way. And New Zealand's on the top of my list. I also have some friends in the industry that rave about doing this in Iceland, and that's also something I want to experience. I also had a friend who did an amazing camping trip in Slovenia earlier this year. And that was nothing that was ever on my radar, but it's really opened my mind up to so many different types of trips that I think would really be an amazing way to experience a destination.
Yeah, I think we were saying that before. The thing about the United States is that it is so big and it offers everything. And you can spend a lifetime of holidays 2, 3 times a year, and you never have to go to the same place. I mean, when you go from Florida to New England and from the West Coast to the East Coast and all the national parks. And, I feel like I did a lot of round trips in the US. I spent a lot of time in the US, but I haven't seen half. So it's not, people sometimes laugh at the Americans because they never leave their country, but they don't really have to. They have it all.
Yes, I think that's an interesting outside perspective. I personally travel quite often and leave the US to have many experiences, but I do agree with you. I always domestic destinations here in the US come back on my list, and there's so many different corners to explore. There's so many places. I mean, I've almost been to every top 50 US city. I think I'm like 2 or 3 short. I've almost been to all 50 states. And yet I still have many, many, many places to discover and explore. One of my favorite trips was here in Texas. We rented an RV to go to Big Bend National Park, which is probably one of the more remote places you can go in the US. It's along the Mexican border, the most south point almost of the US. And it just to, your point of discovering the country and really opening your eyes to a different part. I mean, so many parts have different kind of cultures, almost experiences and people, and it just really puts in perspective the world, and especially the US. There's just so many people get bogged down with being online and reading the news cycle and the toxicity of social media. And I just, especially when I went to Big Bend National Park and kind of saw the vastness and how small we really are in this world, it just opens your eyes to so much more. And I met some of the most kind people, and it just puts life in perspective a little bit. And so I always am encouraging that type of travel and to really get out there and have those experiences.
Yes, I mean, traveling in nature, or traveling in general makes you humble, but traveling in nature really shows you how small you are and how big the world is. And you are totally right about the toxicity and social media. Because I was thinking before while you were talking, I was thinking, looking at Instagram, that's where I realized how little I had actually seen of the US, even though I felt like I had seen a lot. And this is the good side. But then on the other hand, it's people criticizing. I mean, this is not got nothing to do now with what we're talking about. But it's so easy to sit behind a keyboard and say something bad about somebody. I don't think these people would ever dare say that into your face. It's just this, I call them the keyboard warriors.
Yes, definitely. And I feel like it definitely weighs people down. It puts you in a bad state of mind and in a horrible outlook on the world and just humanity. And I've had so many amazing experiences being on the road, like kind of disconnecting, maybe because you have to, because there's not service or Wi-Fi. And so even in these national parks, like you're kind of removed. And, we have so many options to remain connected today, but to opt out of that and really use a camping trip, an RV trip to escape from all of that and have some deep conversations with locals and really hear about their lives and how they experience the world. And especially in these more remote places, it just allows you to kind of, yeah, see the world in a different light. And I think really cleanse you of that toxicity.
Yeah, because I believe, and that's not just in the US, I believe that there is the same amount of good and bad people wherever you go, the same
Yeah.
percentage, every country you go to. And,
Yeah.
it's so easy to judge. It's so easy to put a people or a country into a basket and, call them something. But I don't believe in that. And another thing that we also forget is what we're here for a very short time. I think, okay, now you've done 25 RV trips in how many? 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, 4 or 5 or 6 years at this point. Of course, that comes along with my job. They haven't always been like leisure trips. I have stayed in RVs through work, and we also are working in travel. I've worked in travel my whole career, and I've found at a very young age the way to merge a huge passion of mine with a job, and that has bode well for me because people who work in travel understand the importance of it and allow you to take time off to have these experiences because most of the time it gives back to your work. And at RVshare in particular, employees get a stipend to rent an RV. So, I use that a few times a year. Again, my husband enjoys this type of travel too and has really also encouraged us to do trips that I wouldn't necessarily have been comfortable with at first or thought that that was for me before I worked in the outdoor travel space. I hadn't RV'd before. I had camped, but similarly to you, my camping experiences, I remember rain and wind and cold and mud. And that wasn't something that
Rain, wind, cold, and emptying the toilet.
but then once I had tried an RV for the first time because I was about to work in this industry and I needed to be able to talk to the experience, I was like, wow, I could get on board with this. I enjoy being outside. I enjoy hiking, the fresh air, seeing amazing landscapes and experiencing these parts of the world. And so now we're kind of hooked. And I actually met my husband through the company. He also works at RVshare. And one of our most memorable trips was to Hawaii. We rented a camper van and spent a few nights in a camper van in Maui. And that's actually where he proposed. And so now my life is very RV oriented and very much part ingrained in who I am.
That's so cute because that was just going to be my next question. What is your most memorable trip? And so it was Hawaii. I mean, how much better can it get when you are in the RV business and then your husband proposes in an RV? I mean, that's very romantic. And I understand, of course, that you need knowledge. You need to be able to answer questions that because people are asking a lot of questions before they do something like that. Now,
Mhm.
What is your clientele? What age group does everybody do RV travel? Is there a certain group of people? Is there a certain age group? Who are these?
Yeah, I think you can enjoy RV travel at any age, but where we see the most popular segment of people is those that are renting and experiencing this type of trip and aren't owning the RVs but want a taste of the lifestyle, are people who are, between the age of like 30, 45, maybe 50, usually have kids that are older than 6 or 7, maybe like in the middle, young age, and really looking to take a family trip and experience the RV lifestyle without having to own their own vehicle and have the overhead of maintenance and cost. And then those that own the vehicles and rent them out are older, usually more retirement age, maybe 50 to 70. We have seen through the pandemic, the shift of these demographics have really changed, and different people got into this world. A lot more younger families and couples were buying RVs and using them, because life changed at that point and they had more flexibility and they could work from the road or even school from the road and teach their children while they're traveling and seeing the country. So, even 4 or 5 years on from that period of time, we're still kind of seeing a change in just who's interested in RV travel and the outdoor lifestyle. But I would say that's the majority of people. Our company personally sees a lot of US travelers, but when I'm on the road and in an RV, I see a lot of international travelers coming in to experience RV travel and to see the US this way. Whether they're using our rental platform, but there are a lot of other RV companies out there that facilitate types of like caravans and things like that. And it's amazing to see how many people kind of are enjoying this lifestyle.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And of course, during COVID, it was also a very safe way of traveling because you didn't interact with anybody else if you didn't want to.
Yes. Yep.
And I think it could also be an opportunity for somebody who is actually thinking of buying one, to try it out first and to see, maybe think, oh no, this is not for me, or you can get completely hooked.
Oh, certainly. We have a lot of people who try before they buy. I think too, because our platform has a variety of different types of RVs, they can actually even try out the make or model that they are looking to buy. So a lot of people come to rent first and make sure. I have a personal story with that. During the pandemic, my husband and I thought, oh, we should buy an RV. It's time. It'd be a great, besides that, all the prices went sky high because other people had that same thought. We thought we'd wanted a camper van and something small that would be easy to maneuver and drive long distances. And then we decided to rent it first, of course, because we do work in this business. And thankfully, we did not spend all that money on a camper van because we found very quickly it was very too small for us. My husband's quite tall, and that would have been uncomfortable and frankly, a waste of money. So I think trying out these different RVs before buying is a way to make a smart decision.
Yeah, and the other thing that if I understand well what you were saying me before, somebody who owns an RV it's like Airbnb in a way. They can give it to you and you can rent it for them. Did I understand that correct?
That's right. Yeah. So all the RVs that are listed on our site on RVshare.com, they are individually owned. So if I own an RV, I can list it for rent. And then usually it's for rent by owner. So they are managing the listing, setting the pricing, communicating with the renters, and helping them facilitate those trips. There are starting to pop up like kind of property managers that are similar to what we see today on vacation rental sites like Airbnb, where somebody manages it for you. We call that consignment in the RV space. So you kind of hand off your vehicle, maybe they store it for you and facilitate these rentals, and you get, the payout in which you are earning based on sharing your vehicle. And so, yeah, it's very popular. We have more than, 60,000 owners on the platform that share their RV so others can have this type of experience.
And that's also useful because then you don't need to park it anywhere because that could be another issue, couldn't it? Depending on where you live, if you
Yes.
have one, you need to place it somewhere.
Yes, and it also helps with costs of ownership. Obviously RVs come with a buying cost. You might be paying month-to-month payments to pay it off. You have overhead fees and costs like storage, maintenance, things like that. And so if owning an RV is something you want, renting it out periodically could cover off those costs for you.
Yeah. Now, are people allowed to cross the border? Are they allowed to go into Canada when they rent with your company?
Yes, you can go into Canada. That is a trip that's on my list. I would love to go up to Seattle and do Olympic National Park and into Canada and Vancouver up to Whistler. That's a super popular trip and one that we see often. You are welcome to do that with RVs and you'll be properly insured in Canada as well as the US. However, you cannot go south of the border.
I
So you
was just
can't,
going to say, how about the other side?
yeah,
No.
not into Mexico.
Okay, okay. I did a few years ago. I didn't have an RV, but I drove from Calgary to Vancouver through the parks, and it was probably one of the most beautiful trips that we ever did. It's just so beautiful. But then again, it's the Rocky Mountains, and there is, they go all the way. They go to the US as well. Now, what are we're already quite far in, but what are do's and don'ts in RV travel? Do you have any tips for people? Are there like general things that people do wrong or that would help people? If somebody's listening, thinking about it, not sure if they should, what if, and this and that, how would you encourage somebody and what should you not do?
Sure. I think, RV travel it can be a learning curve, and, we kind of touched on that a bit. And the best way to try out RVing for the first time would be using our delivery model where you rent an RV and have it delivered and set up for you. So you're not worried about maneuvering it, driving it yourself, filling it with gas, dumping the tanks, setting it up at a campsite. So it just really takes out a lot of those what ifs and to
So
dos.
sorry, that would be stationary then. You wouldn't be moving it.
Right. So it's definitely a different type of trip. Maybe it's a stop along a road trip you're already taking in a rental car. So you're opting to stay in an RV rather than maybe like a cabin or a hotel. And why that's beneficial is because a lot of these places that you might be traveling to see these landscapes or national parks might not have hotels and availability at camp or cabins and things like that. And so an RV could be a good option. And it's unique and a different way to stay. So it would be stationary. You wouldn't be moving it afterwards. So maybe you have it, put it in a, parked and set up for you for a night or two, and then you would like move on your road trip. But it's a good way to just try that out, test out staying in one. I still think you get a really good experience of being outside in nature. You can still have a bonfire and roast s'mores and like cook on a grill and have your bedroom, bathroom, and kitchen all right in one unit. So that's like probably the easiest way to kind of get into the RV travel space. But if you are gung ho about traveling and driving it and having that stereotypical quintessential road trip, my biggest do would be just to make sure you're doing your research and planning out ahead of the trip a little bit, making sure you know where you're stopping. I think one of my learnings that I've had on the road is to arrive at the campground before dark.
Mm.
Somehow we always ended up getting there post sunset, and it's very difficult to set up a vehicle you're unfamiliar with in the dark. Thankfully, a lot of these campground owners are extremely helpful and savvy at setting up an RV if you did have questions or issues. But it is a lot of help being there early and planning ahead, knowing where your destination is. Once you get better at driving and you're more comfortable, the beauty of RV travel is flexibility. So you don't necessarily have to plan ahead. And so I think, having a number of RV trips under my belt, that's more of the way we travel at this point. But planning ahead is definitely necessary.
And that probably also includes not being overconfident and wanting to go too far in one day, I could imagine.
Yes, that's a good tip as well. Our RVs drive a bit slower. They're a heavier vehicle. It just takes a little bit longer to get somewhere. So always err on the side of, more time and less distance.
But sort of coming to the end, it is worth a try.
Yes, I definitely think so. I think it's worth a try. I had mentioned that RVshare offers up built-in insurance when you rent. So, things can go wrong on a camping trip, things happen, but you're going to be properly insured and most of the, no worries there. I think RVshare has more than 95% five-star reviews on the trips that people take with us. Really enjoy this type of travel and always usually have an amazing experience. And so I would say give it a try. It's an amazing way to travel. And definitely, if you're an avid traveler, something you should do at some point.
I think you're beginning to convince me. I may. Now, before we end, where do you think you will? Because you said you may try or you will try doing it abroad. Where do you think your first trip will be?
Yes, like I mentioned, I would love to do it in New Zealand. There's already a pretty big presence there with RV travel and lots of resources out there on the internet to plan out a great itinerary. I think New Zealand would be an amazing country to see by RV.
I did New Zealand in a week, which was a total joke because I used to do Australia round trips. And when we had more than 10 people in the group that would add a week in New Zealand, we would accompany it. And I had one of those trips. So I've been to both to the North and to the South Islands in a week. So I think I may join you on that trip because I haven't seen anything. I was just in hotels, but I've seen a few things, but definitely beautiful country. I'm from Switzerland. It's similar to Switzerland when it comes to nature, but of course, much bigger and beautiful. So you recommend RV travel. I recommend New Zealand this time. So thank you so much for being on the most memorable journeys today, Maddi Bourgerie. And I forgot to ask you, I wanted to ask you at the beginning, how do you pronounce your family name? Did I do it right?
Yeah, you said it right. It has a French
It does.
background. So I'm not surprised that you got it right.
Thank you, Maddi.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.